last speaker before the lunch break, please bear with us, is Noma Qase, a senior official from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. Noma is a seasoned executive with over 20 years of experience. She's cut her teeth in the public service. She serves in the interdepartmental structure that is charged with developing a South African renewable energy master plan. And there is, I think, no better placed person to talk about all of the integrated initiatives that are coming from government, as well as the work being done in DMRE as we prepare for this decarbonization and just transition journey. Noma, thank you very much for being with us today.
Good afternoon. Greetings to all the VIPs. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not want to mess up with the protocol. So I'll just say, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I will be talking to you, I will be talking to the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan that we are currently busy with. Okay, so because I do not have all the details about the audience, I know that some of you are already participating in the master plans. Others may be hearing about it for the first time. So I will take you through what the master plans are. And therefore, I'm requesting those who are already familiar with participating in our process to just bear with me. So, in terms of what a master plan is, it's simply a comprehensive plan of action that is meant to galvanize all of us. I think in saying that, I must just say I do wish I could meet the person who's mobilized all of us to rally behind the just transition and the support to Mpumalanga province. The voice of that person is so profound, so powerful, that I wish we can do the same for so many other problems that South Africa is facing. So congrats to that person whose original idea it was to do this. And I'm hoping that somebody else, because we all own it now. So I'm hoping that we can continue to do the same with all other social injustices. So master plans, a master plan is used as a tool to define coordinated activities, and those activities will range from policies and programs right up to the activities that are conducted by the private sector. And the whole idea is that we align a common set of goals for industries, as these will be determined by the stakeholders that are involved. I'm happy to be speaking after Brian and our Mr. Mabuza, because the empirical evidence is important also for informing what we do with these master plans. And so with the Renewable Energy Master Plan, we've also relied on the research that has been done by our team. It leads through the action plan, which has to be monitored and evaluated as part of a structured and institutionalized process. And we are always accountable for this. We are monitored by the DTIC, which is the responsible lead department, as well as the Office of the President. What are the objectives? In the main, we're looking at encouraging sustainable investment in the country and also identifying employment opportunities. I'm not going to go through everything on each slide, but I thought that it's important to highlight this one because we do want to deepen industrialization, and doing that requires us to look across the different sectors. So to make sure that we explore the cross-sectoral linkages. So for the Renewable Energy Master Plan, we are basically looking at, it's basically an implementation plan for driving industrialization through the renewable energy sector value chain. And we're basically looking at opportunities to develop industrial capacity and also looking at implementing private and public sector levers that can enable that. So our starting point has been the Integrated Resource Plan 2019, which our colleagues at DTI, they define as, the IRP is what defines the size of the pie, so that we know what we're aiming towards achieving what the Integrated Resource Plan, which is focusing on the electricity generation needs, what potential there is there, and it also then guides us in terms of which technologies we must focus on. All master plans are following the same methodology. We're supposed to do research. There is an emphasis on consultation because at the end of it all, we are supposed to have a social compact that all of the key stakeholders, labor, government, and business are supposed to buy into and therefore commit to working together to meet the targets. So we got a draft already, but we are I'd like to emphasize that the consultation process has not stopped. We're looking for feedback. I will present to you now what the vision and the objectives are for this master plan, so that because that's what aligns our thinking and also our focus, and it also enables all of us to be talking in one voice. So in terms of the vision, we have tried to emulate what we saw on the automotive sector. And so there the vision is that we're looking at industrialization of the renewable energy value chain to enable inclusive participation in the energy transition, serving the needs of society and contributing to economic revival. That is what the vision is, and to be able to realize this vision, we have a set of objectives. So for these objectives, I would like to, so the objectives that we have, we're looking at growing the economy, the measure there being GDP, the GDP contribution. And then we're looking at creating and sustaining decent employment. I think the speakers from the dignitaries, I remember that the EU deputy head, the deputy head of the SAEU delegation was talking to decent employment. So it's basically, what you will notice is that there's a common thread throughout all of this presentations, because all of us, we are trying to solve one problem and we are all trying to make a difference. And so then the other objective is around growing capacity in the value chain, and we measure that in terms of percentage that's localized, and then building a transformed industry. There we are focusing very much on ownership and management of local manufacturing capacity, and especially by Black persons, women, youth, and people with disabilities. And I'm glad that I don't have to explain that further, because Brian has taken us through all of that. Thank you so much, Brian, for making our work easy. Then we're also looking at, as a fifth objective, contributing to a just transition. And in this case, we are focusing on the just energy transition, where we are looking at integrating with the hotspots, and Mpumalanga is our identified hotspot. So we've got 2025 and 2030 targets. Out of the targets, I'm not going to read everything, but what I want to emphasize is that on employment, we are hoping that by 2030, it could be possible to achieve 36,500 jobs that could be created. The contentious one is around localization, where we are, by the very nature of these master plans, that we have to be ambitious. Without that, there is nothing that inspires anyone to get involved, and there is nothing that inspires those who are waiting for change to look forward to what we think, if we are not promising to make any difference to their current situation as it is. So what we have, we are looking for 2030, we're looking at a percentage of 70% in terms of key components, and then 90% around the balance of plant and operation and maintenance activities. This is a substantial change from 2025, which is 2 years from now, where the target is at 40% and on key components, and then 80% on balance of plant and operation and maintenance. So to put this into so let me just say, in terms of contribution to just energy transition, we are looking at, in terms of our target at the moment, we are saying 10,000 job opportunities for you and former employees within the coal sector. So there we are then looking at least people must be provided with training, and then they must also be receiving those decent job opportunities that we have spoken about. So to put all of this into perspective, we are saying, in terms of the, if we said the integrated resource plan is our starting point, then the government procurement up to now are basically bid window 4. The targets, I know that those who are sitting at the back might not be able to see the slides, so I'd like to just say, in terms of PV in bid window 4, our understanding is that we were at 88% in terms of balance of plant, and then key components was as just below 40%. And so that's why we want to then make sure that we ramp up a little bit in terms of our aspirations under the Renewable Energy Master Plan. So we have a dashboard where we are looking at the top opportunities as well as the challenges. In here, what I would like to highlight is really the fact that we are looking at manufacturing, that we're hoping that it will provide economic diversity in terms of the change that is happening in hotspot areas, but also in terms of the challenges. We want to create an ecosystem of competitiveness that would enable a sustainable supply, so to the extent that we'll be able to export, and also make sure that we take up this offtake for the private sector opportunity that has been created by the increase in the licensing thresholds up to 100 megawatts for projects. The exemption, that's what I mean. So we are expecting that as we embark on the implementation of the Renewable Energy Master Plan, there will be trade-offs, and so one of the things that we are currently seeing is that, for instance, there are input materials, and then there's beneficiation that has to come with manufacturing. And SAREN is taking a position that is aligned towards the beneficiation. But I like what has been said previously, because we have to look at how we diversify. so that we can be able to maximize the gains from localization. And so one of the things that would be necessary is that there is a need for coordination with other master plans. In particular, for instance, there is a steel master plan that provides some of the input materials into what the renewable energy sector relies upon. We also are looking at enabling industrialization through the growing the private sector pipeline for offtake. And there we are hoping to coordinate through Operation Green Belt so that the more stakeholders that are involved, the better are our chances of succeeding in what we are trying to do. So I'm not going to talk much again, but the Renewable Energy Master Plan recognizes the work that needs to be done in establishing the right conditions for South Africa to enter fully into the green hydrogen market. I think the other speakers have already spoken to that too. So we are looking at this using the analogy of a house. There we are saying Southern Health depends on 4 pillars. Those pillars being optimizing value add, looking at future demand growth, trade and export, as well as skills and new entrant support. So the new entrant support is very, very much important, because if we want to make sustainable changes and we want to make this economy, we want to take this economy to the next level, we need to accommodate those who are actually outside at the moment, women being among those. So I like the fact that all of us are aligned in terms of that. So all these pillars, they sit on these cross-cutting aspects where building a transformed industry, enabling co-location in terms of where there are transition spots, and also having market certainty. So those are the determinant of how strong these pillars would be, because each and every one of them has to ensure that we take into account these cross-cutting issues. And I think I reheard how Mpumalanga itself is looking at creating local manufacturing within the region. So again, explaining the previous slide, I thought this is important to also just flesh it out for people who might look at the slide after. So we are, as I've said, we are putting together an ecosystem of competitiveness. Just because we are expanding the type of participants in the economy and where we are playing a role in terms of the manufacturing sector, it does not mean we should ignore competitiveness, and so that is also something that is important. In terms of our focus on having a transformed and inclusive industry and also contributing to a just transition, we're saying each of the work streams that we have who are developing the master plan, we have to make sure that each of these cross-cutting areas is applied, and that we should not be looking at each work as a standalone, because the integration is important for success and for meaningful contribution. So we also talk about the levers that are required to build competitiveness, and we're saying this can be targeted to increasing the capacity to compete for Black people, women, youth, and people with disabilities. The example that we have currently is that we need to leverage the Black Industrialist Program and also to deploy competitive capital and guarantees for emerging suppliers. We also need to be looking at increasing the geographic competitiveness of the just transition hotspots, for example, through the establishment of economic development zones and eco-industrial parks. So I'm not going to go through the private offtake in detail, but what we are saying is that we cannot ignore the possible impact that private generation could make, or the losses that we could incur if we do not take it into account. I mean, if you can build a 100 megawatt project without going through the government tender processes and all of that, or meeting the requirements that are stipulated, then we might be missing out on an opportunity. And so we said, under SARA, we need to balance our attention to this, both private procurement and public procurement and private offtake. So in terms of the value chain, we are basically looking at the value chain starting from the project planning right through to the end of life of the plant. And so, but what we are zooming on under the development of the Renewable Energy Master Plan is, of course, manufacturing. So what we have then done is to recognize that so far in this slide, the country has done well around system assembly, but we then need to make sure that as we move backwards through this value chain, we also maximize opportunities for creating more jobs. So I'm close to being done. To summarize, what I've just said now, in terms of emerging opportunities for action in priority areas, we're looking at short-term market certainty and to encourage competition to build local capacity. We're also looking at medium-term market certainty and support for establishing a manufacturing base that can compete internationally. So one of the opportunities that have been identified is that our manufacturing sector cannot rely solely on what South Africa can buy or contribute, but we need to then also be looking at international markets, what are the opportunities within the region and beyond. So I must just emphasize that everything that we are doing so far, it is the work in progress. There is no approved or agreed set of actions that we are going to follow. We're still consulting, and then when the consultation process is finished, or when there are agreements, we will then be looking at how those could be implemented. But this is a living document. There is a proposal that we need a platform for a demand-led skills development program, and so in doing that, we would need to bring in the other departments, for instance, the Department of Higher Education and Training, that is not currently part of the development of the master plan. We need to work together as we are doing already between industry, labor, and government institutions to make sure that whether it is around reskilling people who have lost jobs, for instance, in Mpumalanga in the coal sector, or young people who still need exposure to opportunities, we need to make sure that we create the right platform for that. So I'm now winding down to where we are and moving from the draft master plan to the finalization. So we still have a few steps to take. We've got research and consultation that has informed the work that we already have that are presented now at a high level. And from the issues that I've mentioned, what is happening is that all of the stakeholders, in particular industry, for instance, are grappling with committing to targets. From their perspective, You can only commit if you know what the market conditions will be. And a reference point at this stage is the procurement from government. And then we need to look at possible enabling actions that would then be championed by mandate holders. So by mandate holders, I'm talking to the key institutions, let's say in government, what the Department of Mineral Resources needs to do, what DTIC needs to do in order to ensure that we are able to effectively implement the plan. So the draft that we are expecting that all the mandate holders will review what is proposed from the process to see if it resonates with them, or if not, then we can look at possible refinements or even adding new information. So the argument on targets, it's still outstanding. We need to be able to say, can we live with the kinds of targets that we are proposing? Can we commit to them as those who are responsible for ensuring that the targets are met? What are the agreement on prioritized actions that still are required as well? And then, as far as we are concerned, we're almost there. Implementers, decision makers are constituted into implementation task teams with conveners that's required. And what would be helpful, especially for people who are outside this room, is to understand what is the list of catalytic projects that would be implemented. These should be updated with investments that is aligned with them. Then we would have to take the draft master plan for adoption and, of course, then move on to implementation. So that is my presentation, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. I just want to say, before I leave this stage again, I apologize. Looking at the profile of people who were here, my DDG was supposed to be here, but unfortunately was asked to be somewhere else, and I was then asked to come in instead. But thank you so much.
Noma, thank you very, very much. Hopefully you showed how all of government, particularly at the national level, across government departments, are now gearing up to work in unison rather than potentially in a fragmented way. I also need to say the Presidential Climate Commission is also finalizing its just transition framework, which will also be presented to government. And what we are seeing here is all of government, spheres as well as across executive functions and departments, beginning to coalesce around a common vision about what the opportunities and risks are, but focus on the opportunities that give us a path to a renewables and green future, but which ensures jobs, growth, and unemployment reduction as we move forward. I'm not going to stand any longer in between you and lunch. I will call on my colleague who will explain what the lunch arrangements are. If I can appeal to you to keep it as short as possible, we're providing for an hour, but if you can get back to your seat